Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Wednesday Wellness Live. I'm so excited you're here to talk to me about something that's absolutely transformative for my clients and something I'm actually really personally very passionate about. So for those of you just joining, I'm Dr. Riley. I'm a functional medicine practitioner specializing in hormonal health and metabolic wellness and how that impacts our relationships. So today we're going to dive into week 18 of our series, Hormonal Intuition, recognizing your body's boundary signals. We're gonna wait for a few more people to jump in. So say hello in the comments there. Let me know where you're from. Also, if you're catching the replay, type replay so I know you're here. I got some comments coming in, it's great. So, all right, let's dive in. Today's topic is all about understanding the powerful connection between your boundaries and your hormonal health. Something that's really actually very rarely discussed in both Western medicine, alternative medicine, and psychotherapy. So let's start with a very quick story about a client. We're going to call her Maya. Last month during a session, Maya had what I call a hormonal epiphany. She suddenly realized that every single time she agreed to take on extra projects at work, she'd get the same specific headache pattern and would wake up at 3 a.m. for the next 3 nights without fail after that. She looked at me and said, listen, my body has literally been screaming at me to set boundaries, and I've been completely ignoring it. This is where it gets interesting. That moment changed everything for her. Within just 6 weeks of establishing clear work boundaries, her sleep improved dramatically, her afternoon crashes diminished, and her hormonal acne actually started clearing up. This is what I call hormonal intuition. It's the ability to recognize and respond to your body's chemical signals before they escalate into larger health problems. And here's what's really, truly amazing. It's a skill that anyone can develop. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And by the end of this live, you're going to understand how your hormones communicate boundary violations and how to start setting and creating clear, personalized boundary frameworks for yourself. So some of the hormonal communication basics, we're gonna jump right into this. So first, let's talk about how your hormones actually communicate with you. You can think of your endocrine system, your hormonal command center, as this incredibly sophisticated messaging network. It doesn't speak English or Spanish or any verbal language, obviously, right? So instead it communicates through physical sensations, energy fluctuations, and mood shifts, and countless other signals. The problem is we live in a culture that constantly encourages us to override these signals. Just push through the fatigue, ignore the stress, have another cup of coffee. Who does that sound familiar to? I know it sounds familiar to me, and I know I've done all those things, and sometimes I still do, but I pay the price. Because here's the thing, when we consistently ignore these hormonal messages, our bodies don't actually stop communicating, right? They just get louder and louder and louder through increasingly disruptive systems and symptoms. The weight gain that doesn't budge despite your perfect diet, right? Those energy crashes at 3 p.m. every day, the anxiety that seems to come out of nowhere, the brain fog that no amount of caffeine can actually really cut through. These aren't random malfunctions. They're escalating signals from a hormonal system that's truly been pushed beyond capacity to maintain balance. So the question is, how do we establish boundaries to connect? How exactly do boundaries connect the hormones? Let me break it down. When you repeatedly cross your body's boundaries by sleeping too little, over-exercising, the big one, saying yes when you need to actually say no, you're exposing yourself to chronic stressors. You trigger a cascade of hormonal, we're going to call them maladaptations, so bad adaptations. First, your adrenal glands pump out cortisol and adrenaline to help you cope with the perceived threat. This stress response is designed to be temporary, but when boundary violations become chronic, this temporary solution becomes a permanent state. And with prolonged cortisol elevation, other hormonal systems begin to compensate. So your thyroid might actually downregulate to conserve energy. Insulin sensitivity may decrease. Sex hormone production often shifts as your body decides that reproduction, making babies, is not a priority when you're in a state of emergency, right? It makes sense. The research actually backs this up. There's a 2019 study found that participants with poor work-life boundaries actually showed significantly higher evening cortisol levels and greater insulin resistance compared to those who maintained clearer boundaries. But here's the hopeful part. This is important. This connection works both ways. So when you honor your body's signals and establish appropriate boundaries, your hormonal systems actually can recover with surprising speed. And I see some of you may be commenting that this is resonating. Yeah, this is exactly why sometimes all the perfect supplements, all the diet changes, all that stuff doesn't work because we're missing the really important boundary piece of the puzzle. That's why I'm so passionate about this stuff. It is the missing link. So now let's talk about how to actually recognize these signals. Your body's warning signs are as unique as your own fingerprint, but there are common patterns worth recognizing. So for some people, hormonal strain shows up primarily as energy disruptions, crushing afternoon fatigue, waking up exhausted despite sleeping enough, or that classic tired and wired feeling when you're simultaneously exhausted and unable to relax. For others, these signals appear in mood and cognition first. So brain fog that doesn't lift with caffeine, unexplained anxiety out of nowhere, emotional reactions that are disproportionate to the trigger or motivation that mysteriously disappears, right? The most valuable tool I give clients is what I call a hormonal journal. Here's a takeaway for you. So a way to systematically connect their physical experiences with the boundary challenges that precede them. That's what this is about. So to create your own, start documenting these 5 things for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 1, your physical symptoms. So fatigue, insomnia, digestive issues, things like that. Your emotional and cognitive states. So mood, mental, clarity, motivation. Your boundary challenges. When you said yes when you wanted to say no, does that sound familiar? External stressors, so work deadlines, relationship conflicts, financial pressures, and recovery practices, so sleep quality, rest periods, and nourishment, right? Jot those all down. What typically emerges is really fascinating. There's actually a clear pattern connecting specific boundary violations to then what become predictable hormonal responses. So maybe you'll notice that every time you check an email after 8 p.m., you wake at 3 a.m. Or perhaps you'll see that skipping meals to accommodate other schedules leads to actually unstable energy and mood for the next 48 hours. I'm like, hello? These patterns aren't coincidental. They're your hormonal system communicating with you, and it meets with remarkable consistency. So let me share another quick client story that illustrates how powerful this connection really can be. Give her name Julia. Just like most of my clients and patients, she was a high-achieving executive who came to see me with classic signs of what you might hear referred to as adrenal fatigue. Sound familiar? But here's the thing, that's not entirely accurate because her cortisol was actually elevated at night when it should have been lowering. It was opposite. Her DHEA, which is the master controller hormone, was actually crashing, and her fasting glucose insulin was insensitive. So our work primarily focused on boundaries, establishing a work cutoff time, creating morning and evening phone-free zones, and giving herself permission to say no to additional responsibilities. We made no changes at all to her diet, supplement regimen, exercise routine. Within 3 months, her lab work showed remarkable improvements. Her normal cortisol pattern returned, her DHEA levels increased by 40%, her fasting insulin decreased. Most importantly, she reported feeling like myself again for the first time in years. And this isn't unusual. There's a 2021 review that analyzed 42 studies and found consistent evidence that boundary-related interventions led to improved cortisol patterns, better glucose metabolism, and reduced inflammatory markers. I want to walk you through one more thing here. It's how to create your own boundary framework, okay? So, creating effective boundaries isn't about following some generic template. It's really about developing a framework that addresses your unique hormonal vulnerabilities and life circumstances, because we all have different unique lives. So to do this, you can start by identifying your non-negotiable physical needs based on your hormonal tracking. These typically include minimum sleep requirements, meal timing necessities, and exercise parameters. Next, then you're going to recognize your early warning signals, those subtle indicators, right, that appear right before full-blown hormonal symptoms and meltdowns. Learn to spot these early, and you can course correct before major disruption occurs. Then, establish a clear response protocol for when these signals appear. So this might mean canceling non-essential commitments when your early fatigue signals hit, schedule a recovery day after an unusually stressful week, or adjusting your nutrition when certain cravings indicate hormonal strain. Salt, anyone? It's my favorite. The most challenging aspect for many people is communicating these boundaries effectively to others. This isn't about lengthy explanations or apologies. It's about clear, straightforward statements. So things like, I don't take meetings after 6 p.m. I need 30 minutes alone time to decompress after work. I don't check email on Sundays. Remember that boundary setting is a skill. It takes practice, and each time you honor your body's signals, each time you say no when you need to rest, when you're tired or to protect your time and energy, you actually then strengthen your boundary muscles and your hormonal resilience. I hope those takeaways there at the end can help you put this into practice. If you have any questions or any comments, drop them below, shoot me a message. I just love teaching this stuff because, again, it's something that just completely gets missed. So anyway, hope you found some value here from this.